Hello. Today I will be reviewing the Kamero manual focus prime lens. This is a 35mm f2.8. I wasn't able to find a whole lot about Kamero other than that they were originally sold by Woolworth and Woolco department stores. Woolworth originally started as what they called a 5 and dime store in 1879. That means everything in the store was either 5 cents or 10 cents. Similar to the dollar stores that we have today, where everything is $1 or $1.25 as they are now. Woolworth eventually changed to being a discount department store because after a while there's only so many things you can actually sell for 5 and 10 cents, even in 1879. There is a Woolworth's department store chain in Australia, but it turns out this is unrelated, as Woolworth's in the United States failed to trademark their own name, and it was just available to be used because they didn't exist anymore. Kamero lenses were apparently made by a number of other Japanese manufacturers, notably, and I'll probably butcher these names, Mitake, Tokina, and Makina, amongst others. This one happens to be, according to the serial number, made by Mitake. This particular lens has an MD mount, for which you can buy an adapter, such as this one, which goes on, if I can find the dots. There's the dot, there we go. And this can be adapted to, you can buy these adapters for any camera. This particular one goes to a Sony E-mount, but you can buy them for Canon, you can buy them for Nikon, you could buy them for Fuji, anything you want really. You just go on Amazon, they're about $15 a piece. The construction is quite nice. The focus ring is very smooth, as you can see, but it only goes about 180 degrees, which isn't great. It's still fairly easy to focus, but some of the other lenses that have had larger focus throws are easier because you have more space to adjust for a fine focus. The aperture has 6 blades, which the aperture ring goes from f2.8 to f22 in single stop increments. Most of the other lenses I have reviewed have been mostly half stop increments. This is single stop. There are threads on the front for a 52mm filter, and the entire lens weighs 9.2 ounces or about 261 grams. Now let's go on to some of the tests that I have done. Here we see the focused test chart. I haven't described these charts in a while, so I'll describe them again and where I got them. The focus chart, you can see the URL here on the chart for where I downloaded it from. And I just went to Staples and printed it out on a high-resolution LaserJet printer, and then used a glue stick to stick it to a piece of poster board and hung it to a movable wall in my studio. As we can see in the center, the focus is very sharp and there is no chromatic aberration. If we move over to the corners though, it's not as sharp and there's less contrast and some chromatic aberration. If we go back to the middle and look at f8, in the center we see that it's really sharp and there's no chromatic aberration still. But then we go out to the corners, and although it's sharper than f2.8, the chromatic aberration is a bit worse, but the contrast is better. Now let's look at the distortion chart. This is a vinyl mat that I purchased off of Amazon with 1-inch grid printed on it. This is intended to be used for playing Dungeons and Dragons or other role-playing games, but the grid is quite nice for doing these sorts of tests. I just taped the chart to a wall and took pictures of it. After taking the pictures, I pulled the picture into Photoshop and drew a straight red line from one corner to the other. You can see at the top that there is a little bit of barrel distortion, where the line, instead of being straight, kind of bows a little bit out. And the same happens across the bottom. If we go to the sides, however, it's pretty straight. There's not a whole lot of distortion there. Now let's look at some sample photos. Since I've run out of the photos that I have taken at the local gardens, I had to go somewhere else to take photos. So I went to a local cemetery that has a nice pond with some geese on it and some art installations scattered around the parking area. If we look at this one, which is a fish on a bicycle named Schwins for fins, or fins for Schwins, I don't remember. At f2.8, we'll see that the sky is a bit darker in the corners, but I can't tell from this photo if it's due to vignetting on the lens or if just the exposure is a bit darker. The fish is a bit overexposed, but I'm trying to see if there's any chromatic aberration, and I really couldn't find any. At f8, we see that the colors are a bit washed out, but I'm not sure if that's due to the lens or because I may have exposed it a little differently. This next picture is just some geese on the frozen pond. I only got this one at f8. I just saw the shot and took it while I was walking around the pond. It has a nice contrast and vivid colors. Here's one of some hands holding a rose. There's hardly any difference between f2.8 and f8. The background seems to be the same focus between the two, and I'm not sure exactly why. I believe when I was taking these photos, I had just a pad of paper and a pencil, and as I was taking them, I would write down the shutter number and write down what the lens was, what the f-stop was, because since none of these lenses communicate to the camera, you don't get the metadata that tells you what f-stop all the photos were taken with. So you have to keep track of them manually, and these might accidentally both be f8 photos. But the do not climb sign on the front of the base does seem to out of focus at f2.8, so I'm not sure. After I got home from taking these other pictures at the cemetery, I decided to put the camera on a little tripod and set it on the porch with a pile of peanuts in front and wait for some squirrels to come by. These squirrels are quite tame and will actually come take the peanuts directly from your hand. But to take these, I actually had the camera on a remote trigger. But every time I snapped the shutter, it would startle them and they would run away. But then I got the idea to just put the camera on video and leave it running for a while and see what would come by and take the peanuts. So here's some squirrels and eventually a blue jay. In conclusion, this is a really good lens. 35mm is a nice focal length for landscapes, and I would definitely recommend getting one if you can pick one up. I found a few on eBay for $20 to $40, and some of them actually had a little leather cardboard case that came, round case that it came with. So that's the Kamero 35mm f2.8. If you want one, go pick one up on eBay. Try it. You might like it. If you like this video, please hit the like button and hit subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. In 1960, a Woolworth's, that is really hard to say. Get a muffler. Stop already. Stop honking your horn.